Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hannah Hermanson, bringing you real life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
You guys, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to introduce you to Danni Pomplun. And he has a story with some twists and turns through a tough childhood and young adult years that were blurred by frustration, drugs, alcohol, and a near-death brush with cancer. And he credits yoga with helping him to become healthy and opening his eyes to a world of positive opportunities. He's so grateful that he is now able to share what he's learned with others, whether it's on the mat in his home base of San Francisco or at another location for immersive workshops and teacher trainings. He is a 500-hour registered yoga instructor and a member of the teacher training facility at Yoga Tree in San Francisco. He's also a real person, and he recognizes that he is teaching real people. Welcome to the show, Danni.
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. You know, I always like to give folks a little bit of background if I know the guest. And I started frequenting your classes in San Francisco, and it is so true. You are such a real person. And I loved in your yoga classes when you would just like stop everything and be like, all right, just turn around, look at me. We're going to break this down. So I hope you can do the same on the show today and break down a little bit of these teachings you've gleaned over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think I'm a real person. I don't know if all the time. There's sometimes I question whether I'm a real person or not.
Why is that? You're just like levitating or what?
Well, sometimes life just tosses you these like curveballs, and you're like, did this just really happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so
like, how am I a yoga teacher? This is weird.
Yeah. So take us there. Like, what were you doing before yoga teaching? What was your prior career, if you had one?
Yeah, I actually was, believe it or not, I was a bartender for about 10 years. So I managed nightclubs in San Diego and actually in San Francisco. Bars and nightclubs is what I did for a really long time. I started working in bars at 20. I wasn't even 21 yet, but nobody knew that at the bar. And yeah, my life went from, pretty much just crazy party, drugs, alcohol, fueled all the time to now teaching yoga and going to bed by 9 o'clock. And it's just kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. So was it you mentioned that you did have a brush with cancer, but is that what inspired a change in lifestyle, or was it a different culmination of events?
I think that was like, it wasn't necessarily the biggest, it wasn't the biggest change at the moment. It's what really started happening. That was kind of like what started opening my eyes, so to speak. And then what actually drove action behind it was, when a partner of mine had passed away, I had taken it very, 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 very rough, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I'd never really had trauma before like that. And I've never really lost anybody. And I also didn't have the emotional how to deal with that, nor did I have a support system that would, help me go through that. So I did the best that I could. And, like a lot of us do, we turned to vices, and drugs and alcohol was definitely it for me. And that sent me down a spiral, and yoga really pulled me out of it. It was, I was definitely down in the dumps, and, at the lowest of my low. And, yoga was, I like to say like yoga is that one relationship where like, no matter what, it always welcomes you back. And yoga was definitely like, okay, come on in, like open arms. I got you. What do you need? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It picked me up and held me through it. I never thought I wanted to be a teacher, actually. To be honest, it's like kind of weird that I'm teaching, and now I'm like, now not only do I teach public classes, but now I teach people how to teach, and then I teach teacher advanced skills. It's like,
yeah, you're all in.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but I wouldn't really have it any other way. It's been such a gift, and also like just such a trip. There's no better, like there isn't one day that doesn't go by where I wake up and are we allowed to cuss on this show?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. There isn't one day that doesn't go by where I'm like, what the fuck? Like this, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a story, we each have different symptoms, or it looks different for each of us, but this pattern of needing a radical change. And sometimes it is about like hitting the lowest low, or for me, it was my therapist telling me like, just try yoga, or, I think that those of us that do really resonate with yoga have come from this journey of like wanting to be like connected and passionate and all into something. And yoga is such a great vessel because it can meet you wherever you're at.
Right. Yeah. And the good thing about it too is like, no matter if you go into yoga and you decide to leave, again, it's always there waiting for you with like open arms. It has no judgment. It has no prerequisites. It just says, come on in.
Tell us, do you remember your first yoga class? Were you
God.
open to receiving this gift or not?
I didn't really know. So like my first yoga class, I was 18 and I was living in San Diego. And I remember I was dating this guy, and I would go surfing with him and his friends, and I wanted to impress him. And it was one time after a surf session, they were like, yeah, we're all going to yoga. And I was like, oh, I got to go do some things, when in all actuality, I'd never been to yoga before. And so I didn't want to get embarrassed. And I'd had this roommate at the time who taught yoga, and she had invited me to go a couple times, and I kind of said no. And I remember she told me that it would be better for my running. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I will do this thing. But I remember distinctly coming back and being like, I need to go do yoga. I have to, I have to go be good at it because I have to go hang out with these people now. And, I don't want to be like a fool. And I went to an Ashtanga class, and it just completely kicked my ass.
Yeah, that's an intense place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I had to call off work for a couple of days because I could not, I literally couldn't move. It broke me.
No, yeah, that's amazing. And it's interesting you say that, because the very first time I went to yoga, I thought it was like a cross training thing as well for other exercise I was going to do. And I was in college, and I literally went home to my roommates and made fun of the whole thing. I was like, and then we put our legs up like this, and she was telling us to release.
Yeah.
And then, 2 short years later, I was that girl telling you to put your legs up like this and release.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I hear you. Like, it's when I think back and I look at it again, it's when I have to ask, like, is this for real? Is this really happening? I'm waiting for the cameras to come out and like everyone to be like, yeah, you've been punked.
Yeah. So it is for real. You are a full-time yoga teacher, and you're supporting yourself doing something that you love. And so talk to us a little bit about that transition into like being all in, as we said, and setting yourself up as a business person, right? Because you're running your own income right now.
So, yeah, 100%. I'm a full-on legal business entity. Danni Pomplun is an LLC or INC or whatever the abbreviations that go at the ends. I'm really thankful that I did have like my background in management. When I was working in the bars and the nightclubs, I was able to, I had the privilege of being able to manage these businesses, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about financial responsibility and about organization and scheduling and, kind of that kind of stuff. So I had that skill set built in. When I, about 4 years now is when I decided to dive in headfirst into yoga. I had become an ambassador for Lululemon. I was only teaching a couple classes a week, and I had done some goal setting with them. And, most people think Lululemon is just, a yoga pants company. And actually, if you get to know them and you get to know their culture, it's a lot more than that. They really invest in their people, even in their store ambassadors. And, anyway, we did this goal setting workshop, or this goal setting session. And one of the things I had wrote on there was, I knew I was sick and tired of the bar life, and I knew that it was making me miserable. And at that point I had stopped drinking already, and, decided I want to do something completely different. It was either go back to school or, do something else. And yoga was definitely calling for me a lot. And we set these goals, and, I had wrote like a 3-year goal, and then we dropped it down to a year, and that ended up being 9 months. And then that ended up dropping down to 6 months. And I had saved a little bit of money just in case. And then I just really made the right phone calls and, told the people that were around me, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do this full time. How do I make this happen? And I did. I had a really good support team that had been in the industry. I talked to a bunch of other teachers that were doing this. I was assisting for my main teacher, and I just didn't really, I think what a lot of people forget is for me, I didn't see this as having another option. You know, I didn't see this as I had anything else. I was either yoga was the end of my rope or that was the end of my rope, you know? And so I just dove in head first. I trusted in that this process was going to, you know, take care of me. And let me set this like really, really right. It was really hard. It is really rough. This is the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. Every day is just as scary as the next, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. So many nuggets there that I resonate with, and I know a lot of listeners will. And the first thing that I'm hearing is that like, this is it. Like you have no other option, and to shut that back door and say, I know this is the light I have to follow. This is my path, and that whatever it takes attitude.
Yep.
And a subset of that attitude is what I like to call being an ask hole. And so often I hear people, especially who are like on their path or doing yoga or some service that's really meant to like heal and help people, is this hesitation to ask for support or to lean into your network. But it sounds like that's exactly how you got to where you are, by just telling people your goals and asking them if they could support or participate in those.
Yeah, you know, and here's my main, like the main nugget that I like to give to people is at the end of the day, organization plus action equals result. And that's, you know, that's one thing that I take pride in is like my worth ethic is there. Like a lot of people, you know, say that I'll work myself to death, and I've gotten better at that. But if you don't show up and do the work, you're not going to get the result. If you want to be a full-time teacher and you're just sitting back saying that you want to be a full-time teacher
and manifesting and meditating and reading the book.
Yeah, this is the bullshit about these, like, you know, like the power of vulnerability and da 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 da. That stuff's all great, and you can own these books on your shelves. But if you're not responsible for yourself, and if you're not doing the work, then nothing is going to happen. You can't just, this doesn't happen by osmosis. You got to put the work in. And at the end of the day, it's work. It's not necessarily going to kill you, and it's not necessarily a party. It's just work.
Right. And we're all going to be working in some capacity for the rest of our lives. So if it can be something that, you know, the world needs and is filling up your cup, like you'll be able to sustain it a lot more. Right.
Well, and that's the other thing is like, you know, when people are like, oh, what do you do for a career? Like, what's your job? And I'm like, I don't have a job. And they're like, well, what's your career? I'm like, I don't have a career. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I have a passion, and I get to do my passion every day, which is, you know, it's not, there's some days where it feels like work, where I have deadlines and I have like stuff to do, and, you know, I have to create content, whatever it is, you know, things that we have to do as yoga teachers, but it's stuff that I love to do.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I am a yoga teacher, like on the side. Okay. I didn't lean into monetizing that. And I think so often there's this distinction between being like a yoga teacher and then being an entrepreneur or a health coach or a wellness consultant. So what were some of those steps that you took to monetize your passion and just go all into teaching yoga instead of writing a book and doing other accessory things?
Right. Well, I am writing a book.
Okay.
You know, I think that the first thing was, you know, for like to monetize it is, you know, I offer a product or a service, and in exchange, you know, in this monetary society, you get money. And I also need to feed myself, and I also need to live it somewhere and have a roof over my head. And that just happens to be in San Francisco.
I was going to say, not just any roof, like one of the most expensive partial roofs.
Right. Totally. It's in, you know, I have to live in a closet, which is what's important in San Francisco. You know, I think a lot of people have money issues. Well, what I've come to see is a lot of people have a hard time receiving money for helping others, and it's an exchange of energy. You know, the more that we exchange energy, and it's even and well received, then the better it actually is. But what I decided was like, how much do I need to make? How do I make this living? And how do I set my goals to get there? And I made that happen. I just looked at what I needed to make to live in San Francisco comfortably for what I consider a comfortable life. And I don't live, you know, I don't have a car. I don't really go on fancy trips. You know,
but you have your motorcycle, right? And like
I do have my motorcycle. Yes,
dream life, and you get to use that for adventure. And
and then I just started. You know, I think the thing is, you can look at it as like, you know, how do I make this cash cow? Or, you know, I honestly think that if you're offering something that you're really jazzed about, that you're really 100% authentically like on board for, people are going to get intoxicated by that authenticity. You know, they're going to see that you're excited, that you're going to see that you're passionate, and naturally they're going to want to jam out and support you.
Yeah, I'm totally behind that sort of reverse engineering. Like, let's
Yeah.
look at the lifestyle you want to be living. What's the day to day? What do you need to afford that? And then trusting that if you show up jazzed, you're going to figure out the how, whether it's teaching more classes or starting the book. Like you said, it's just an energy, and you will be rewarded once you're, in alignment with that lifestyle. And I think, well, I know so often I hear people say, like, well, how do you make X amount of money? And I'm like, what is it for? And I think
Right.
asking that question, like, what is it for? And it's just I like how you say it's just a monetary society. It's part of the game, but it's
Yep.
not all of it.
Yep. If it was, maybe back in the day in the land of guru, or, that student kind of teacher relationship, they normally feed you and they take you in and they do all that. And, we don't, we don't live in that society anymore. So we work with what we got going on now.
Yeah, definitely. So you've kind of had this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're used to working hard, right? Like you had to put in time at the bar in order to earn money. And like you said, now you're working harder than ever. And I hear you, passion and being excited about yoga can keep you going. But is there anything else that is really propelling you right now? I see so much burnout and so much passion fatigue. And I'm wondering if you've experienced that and if
I
you've
mean,
had to overcome it.
yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have burnout from time to time. And that's, naturally because I'm a human and I require sleep and I require eating and nourishment and all that. And I can get really wrapped up in one of my main mentors is always telling me, Danny, you don't have to do everything tomorrow. Like,
Mm.
which is fine. But the way I see it is like, okay, I'm in my mid 30s. I just transferred, like changed gears into this part of my life. And I feel like, I'm supposed to be somewhere or whatever, putting pressure on myself, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But also like, I just really love doing this stuff, And so I think it's, how do I offer the things that I want to offer? And also how do I take care of myself? And that's really it. If I feel like, if I'm only showing up halfway or half-assed for my students, that's a telltale sign that I need to slow down. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not there and I'm not able to be present, and that, when you're kidding yourself, when you're like, no, everything's fine, I can handle this, and and when you're just bullshitting yourself,
Yep.
but if I can't show up for my students fully, then that's my main red flag of telling myself to slow down. And I've done that before. I've taken mental health days where I'm just like, I am going to be a disservice to everybody today. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to be a waste of space, and that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's huge to have those outside indicators of a mentor helping you ask yourself the right questions and knowing, okay, I'm going to be a disservice to people. Because I know for me personally, as someone who's a mentor or a yoga teacher, I am so much of my worst coach. Like I have a hard time teaching myself yoga or breathing deeply in my own day to day. And so I'm hearing from you, you do have these like external indicators. And I'm also curious if there are things that you do in your own mind or to teach or coach yourself that maybe some listeners could take with themselves.
I think, one, the most important part is like having your sadhana practice, like your whatever time it is for you to check in spiritually or, like mentally, universally, whatever you want to call it. But having that time out, whether that's in the morning, a lot of people do a sadhana practice in the morning, but it's just reflection time, and it's pretty simple as that, like, sitting down, meditating for a few minutes. And when I meditate, it's not like, clearing the mind, it's just checking in. What's going on? What am I feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, like all the things. And then some journal and reflection time, writing down what's going on, what I'm feeling, what's happening. And then think about my self-care for the rest of that hour and a half, whether that's a couple of yoga poses or whether that's, some yoga nidra, or maybe it's something completely different, but having that check-in factor is the most important, because if you're not keeping yourself in check, then it'll be your own worst enemy, if you just kind of let things slide. You always got to check in and see if you're in alignment so that you can do the things or not do the things.
Yeah. Yeah. So real, so simple. And that sort of transitions me into the pop quiz round. If you're
Ooh,
ready for just 3 last questions
sure.
to really give reader or listener something to chew on today.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is something you recommend listeners do today, right now, to help them get into alignment or get closer to their dream life?
The first thing is, I mean, it's cheesy. And remember that cliches and things that are cheesy are cliche and cheesy for a reason because they work. But the first thing is grab a pen and a paper or grab your notes in your phone and write the shit down that you want to do. It's that simple. Get it out of your head, get it out of this story that's just a story babbling about, and put it down. Make it something attainable.
Yeah, huge, huge. Number 2 is, what is a tangible resource? Like something you wish you could just hand out to every human to help them achieve their goals and, again, get closer to their dream life.
Tangible. What's something that I can hand out? I would say as a resource, like checking in with the people that are doing the thing that you're doing, right? So I knew I wanted to become a yoga teacher in San Francisco. So I found the yoga teacher that I liked in San Francisco and had long conversations with him and just chatted with him because he was doing something that what I wanted to be doing. And he had obviously been really skillful at this thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And someone that's just a little bit ahead of you. That mentorship. Absolutely. I would agree. And I did the same thing. And that whole ask whole mentality has paid off for so many people. So yeah. Great advice. Well, Danni, the last question is, where can people stay connected with you and learn more about what you're up to?
The best place to keep in contact is Instagram and my website. And my website is just Danni, Danni, my last name, Pomplun .com. And then my Instagram handle is, just at Danni Pomplun.
And we'll make sure to have those links. And can folks listen to your podcast on your website? Yeah,
you can follow my podcast. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on Google, we're on all the things. And then you can also find it through my website as well. And there's also everything that I do is also attached to Instagram as well, because that tends to be most people's, marketing, or, most people stay connected on social media via Instagram these days. So everything is all over it.
Amazing. Yeah, I totally encourage everyone to continue these real conversations, because that, like I said, in your yoga class, I was so drawn to just the realness you bring to those classes, but also your show and your Instagram, really good stuff. So I do hope that folks stay connected with you.
Thank you.
And then, Danni, bonus extra credit, any final words of wisdom you want to offer listeners today?
Oh my God, just do it.
Yes, just do it.
Make it happen, people.
Write it down, check in with yourself.
And love yourself a little bit more. Jesus.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much, Danni, for your time and wisdom today. We will be back, folks, next week with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life. Until then.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hannah Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.